Hello and welcome to MINYIP, your fantasy sports community. I'm your host, Blake, manager of Youngies Yaks, and I'm joined by Clinton.
My name's Clinton. I'm the manager of Dash's Dogs.
Feels interesting saying manager, but we are recording our first FPL show for the 22-23 season. Usually we also play the AFL Supercoach and AFL Fantasy formats, and we're used to saying coaches of those teams, but we'll get there, Clinton. If it's the first time you're listening or watching the show, make sure you subscribe to our channel, wherever it may be, on Apple or Spotify podcasts or on YouTube, and like the show if you feel like supporting the show. It's good to be finally back, Clinton, 12 months after we first kicked off our very first MINYIP show.
I can't believe it's been that long. Lots happened in the last year, Blake. And it's been a few weeks now since we've recorded a show, but exciting times with FPL just around the corner. Let's get into it.
Yeah, we'll try and help out at the community as much as possible with posting shows. We'll be a bit busy, but we'll try and get as much content out into our community as possible. The main way to support our show is through our Patreon page. So you can subscribe to our page, which will be on your screen if you're watching, or in your show notes. So subscribe to Patreon, however much you want to support us, whether it be $3 to $12, depending on how much you enjoy the show, Clinton. And that'll also gain you entry into our prize league for FPL, which will be $200 for this season. And also that'll get you entry into our Discord community chat, where we talk about our teams each game week.
I think the big thing is, Blake, if you want to try and win that money, you need to join the next 2 days. It's as simple as that. Obviously, we're recording on Wednesday night and the game starts Saturday morning our time. So hop on if you want to win that money. There's some good challenges in our group.
You'll need to be subscribed to our Patreon before Friday night, Clinton, because I'm not going to be sending you links at 12 o'clock at night Friday before the 3 o'clock deadline. So make sure you get it in and subscribe as soon as. I might be awake. It's very possible that I might be awake, Clinton, but don't want to take that risk. So make sure you do it as early as possible and subscribe to our Patreon page so that we can get you entry into our community. Let's get into talking some FPL, Clinton. We haven't really talked much about our FPL teams, but we've both been listening to a few podcasts. Who was your first selected player for this season?
It's an interesting question, Blake. Now, there's a lot of strategies about how you go about picking your team. I think over the course of the last few weeks, I've tinkered way too many times. So it's a hard question to answer because there's players who are locked in straight away and I've changed things. So
there hasn't been just one player you've selected and he stayed there the whole time?
Let me think. I think that if there was one person, I would go with Jesus for Arsenal. Obviously, we're in Arsenal top as we speak. I was very keen on him early, and ever since he's been scoring goals for fun throughout the preseason, he hasn't really left my team. So that's probably the main one for me. And I have tinkered a lot with different structures, etc.
Yeah, very interesting. You've just gone with the rest of the FPL public, Clinton, and he's about 70% owned in the FPL now. I'm just following the crowd, but that's all right.
He was about 30% owned when I first jumped on Blake, so I jumped on him straight away. So it's hard to be judgmental of that pick.
He has been the informed player of the preseason, Clinton, and that probably leads into my next question. How much consideration do you take into preseason form when you're doing your FPL team?
It's definitely a factor, but it's not the most important thing. I think sometimes players are building their way into the season. Not every player is hitting peak form 1 or 2 weeks prior to the season starting. So it's definitely a factor. Obviously, we take into consideration history and the likelihood of these players scoring points from the get-go. So, yeah, it's great to be scoring goals in the preseason, but you have to be very careful or make sure that these players can continue that form. So, for example, Leon Bailey for Aston Villa, he scored a few goals for them. He's very much not even talked about, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, but now he's all the rage as a cheap midfielder. But it's making sure that he continues to get those minutes because Aston Villa are a good team and they've been shuffling a few players around. So it's making sure that these players can hold that pre-season form.
Especially in AFL Supercoach, Clinton, we talk about in the preseason players being traps. Do you reckon Bailey's a trap leading into the season?
Potentially. Neto, you could throw in that bracket also. I think the other thing is the fixtures that they have at the start of the season. So Aston Villa and Wolves have a couple of great fixtures early, which is why I think they're all the rage. But if they do fail game week 1, immediately they're traps because they haven't hit the ground running like we would like, and then all of a sudden we're thinking about trying to trade them out. So, yeah, I think there's quite a few traps, to use that term, but everyone should play their own game. And yeah, there's lots of different ways you could go about it. I'm definitely going different to the norm. I'm looking forward to seeing your team, Blake.
Yeah, it's I definitely don't. I'm not following the crowd this season, Clinton. I'm playing my own game, but we'll get to that a bit later on. You talked about some players that are highly owned there. How much consideration do you look at with the percentage ownership?
Ultimately, it's up to you if you really care. I mean, if you focus on your own game, it shouldn't really matter. But if you're trying to win overall and you're going against the grain with whether it be Jesus or other highly owned players, if that doesn't go well, it doesn't go well at all. And I can speak from experience from early last year when I took a big gamble and it didn't come off at all. And I quickly went from about 200,000 to 3.6 million. So it can change very quickly if you go against the crowd. So I think this year's slightly different. And if you aren't aware, the World Cup's approaching, so we can have potentially a wild card to be used earlier. So I think there's a chance you can be a bit more risky with your starting team this year, and you can change that quickly if it doesn't go well.
Yeah, there's risky, and you might be calling my team maybe stupid if once we call it out, but we'll look forward to hearing your opinion of my team, especially with the differentials I have going into the season. But if you remember from last season, Clinton, after game week 1, I was about 7.5 million ranked overall, and I slowly climbed up to be about 250,000 by the end. So, yeah, if you start slowly, don't get too down in the dumps. There's plenty of upside throughout the year.
However, ideally we're still aiming for a top 100k rank. That's where you can really, I'd say, classify yourself as a good season. So we both came from a long way back. I think I was about 150k behind you, but yeah, top 100k is a good rank. Top 10,000k is elite.
Yeah, I just want to get better season on season, and yes, top 100k would be very good. Going to my next question, Clinton. There's some quite expensive players this season in Haaland and Salah and Kane. How can you squeeze them all into your team, Clinton? These top tier players, you can't have them all, obviously, but how do you differentiate between these top players? That's the ultimate question, which I've been seeing on Twitter the last few days between Haaland and Kane, or getting rid of Salah so you can find some value. How do you differentiate between these players?
Well, ultimately, that's the biggest challenge of the game, and that's why it's so good because obviously you can transfer these premiums week to week, but the challenge is which ones you get at the right time. And yeah, I think what's exciting about FPL is the start, and there's so much excitement in the lead up to game week 1, and everyone wants to start really well. However, yeah, these premiums are premiums for a reason, and just like any fantasy format, you can't have them all. So you differentiate with your own gut feel, and as I said earlier, preseason form, the fixtures, and yeah, the added challenge is Haaland coming to the EPL for the first time. Yeah, so it's hard to see how he'll adapt to playing with Man City. So that's the challenge of it, Blake. Everyone could study it for hours and hours and hours, but ultimately you just got to go with your own gut feel and pick a team, and fingers crossed. However, yeah, if you would go for those several premiums, obviously make sacrifices with the rest of your team. So um, the other challenge of that is if you go for the more of the mid-price players, you need to be able to captain. I think captaincy is such an important factor in FPL, and you need to make sure you're having the right premiums at the right weeks to make sure you capitalise on your captaincy scores.
Yeah, another strategy for FPL is your chip strategy, Clinton. So, how do you approach using your chips throughout the season? Do you consider that at all at the start of the year?
I'm not sure if you remember correctly, but I actually used my bench boost in game week 1 last year.
I
But
didn't remember that.
um, and the reason being, yeah, I think I went through it last year, but it's that's a chip that you need to set your team up for, and sometimes in the middle of the season or late in the season, it is quite challenging to maneuver your players to make sure you can capitalize on it. Whereas last year, I went with the theory of just using it, hopefully starting with a good team, and I was going to change it a couple of weeks later. So that's somewhat, I think it definitely backfired last year. The simple answer, Blake, is to not ever consider it for the first half of the season. In the second half of the season, there's double game weeks. There's sometimes, yeah, I think was there a triple game week last year? Maybe I'm not sure, but I think there's chances to get big rewards from your chips later in the season. So the triple captaincy chip is a fun one, but it's better used when there's players are playing 180 minutes, not 90.
Yeah, hold on to those chips as long as you can. Don't use them in round 1. But I pretty much fail with my bench boost each season anyway, Clinton. So I wouldn't worry about last year's round 1. Let's get into some bold predictions for the season, Clinton. Who do you think will be the highest scoring FPL player for this upcoming season?
It's a good question. I think Harry Kane. I'm not sure if you're expecting that answer, but he hit some strong form at the second half of last year. Um, the only query I think is the fact between him and Salah is that Salah won't be going to the World Cup. Kane will be with England, and whether that's a factor or not. But I just think Tottenham were a different team this year. He's this time last year he was being rumoured to move to Man City, and he started the season off pretty poorly. So I think he's up and about, and I expect him to score well. So that's my early bold prediction.
For me, it's another Tottenham play in Son. I think he will get goals as well as assists. Even though Kane was on fire late in the year and getting assists as well, I think Son's probably one of the best players in the league at the moment. So I think Son will lead the FPL points at the end of the year. How about, so do you predict Harry Kane to score the most goals for the season than Clinton with the Golden Boot?
Yeah, I think so. I'll go with him. There's obviously a couple of really strong options, which are the premiums of the game. But yeah, I'll back in Harry Kane, which is, yeah, probably not the most selected option. I think a lot of people are going towards Salah or Haaland even. But yeah, I'll go with Kane.
What are your thoughts on Haaland being new to the league? Previously, other assets coming from Europe, Clinton, they've struggled a bit. The likes of Werner and Havertz were very slow to get going at Chelsea. The only one I can think of recently who's really performed straight away in the league is Fernandez when he came across. What are your thoughts on Haaland straight away?
I think he's a bit of a freak, and obviously He's only a young player. He's had some history with injuries, but if he can stay fit and he can be the key man up front for Man City, I expect him to score really well. So it's very hard man to go without. Last weekend they didn't perform at the greatest versus Liverpool in the Community Shield. However, I think they're just building up towards game week 1, so they've got some nice fixtures early. I expect him to go really well. It's just the big question is his durability.
Yeah, there's a bit of expectation for our teams to perform well this season, Clinton, in Arsenal and Tottenham. But do you think Man City will take it out again?
Yes. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Liverpool second?
Correct. I'm very optimistic of Arsenal being third. I think Arsenal and Tottenham have a strong battle to see who I think comes third. However, I think there's a clear two. Tottenham, I think, yeah, Arsenal and Tottenham, and then obviously I think Chelsea and Man U will be behind the two I just mentioned. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think we're both optimistic about our teams.
Any surprise teams that you think will really bounce out and really perform really strongly compared to last season?
I've got Aston Villa to start well, and I think that's the main one who I think will start well. I think they're relatively strong, I think, and they've got good fixtures early, so I think they're a team that I think can be up there early. But yeah, I haven't had deep dived into the fixtures for the first 10 to 12 game weeks where I've looked very early because in my strategy, I'm actually looking to wildcard early. So I've really attacked the first 3 to 4 game weeks. And then potentially if it's not going well, then I can wildcard anyway. So I've looked strongly at the first 3 to 4 game weeks and Aston Villa feature in my team a lot.
I think they've got a tough few fixtures at the start, but I think Newcastle should perform stronger this season. I'm really intrigued to see what they'll be able to do with the inclusions they've brought into their side. Any consideration to Trippier, Clinton?
He's been a strong consideration. He's not currently in my team. I do like him. I just overall, obviously, there's a lot of excitement for game week 1. If there's something that breaks down, I think it's in terms of the defense. I think there's some teams that really just struggle to really lock in and really play their best defensively early. Obviously, each team's different, so the opportunity for clean sheets, in my perception, is harder earlier because it's teams getting used to each other, and then as the season progresses, they get better as a group. So I think there's an excitement for goals, and I think teams struggle to. As I said, every team might be different, but I just have this perception that teams struggle to get things set up properly. So someone like Newcastle with Trippier as a new player, it's hard to really imagine them being perfect early, and even against Nottingham Forest early, they're in the Premier League for the first time for a long time. They'll have a lot of excitement. I can see them scoring. So that's a factor in my selections.
Even with Pope in goal?
Even with Pope in goal. Most teams have quality goalkeepers. That's just a weird theory that I have.
No, fair enough. That's fair enough, Clinton. I was expecting you to be stronger on Newcastle, but I saw one of the big FPL content providers on Twitter. He posted a stat breaking down percentage of keeping a clean sheet, and no one was above 50% of keeping a clean sheet for this weekend. So I expect a lot of goals as well in game week 1. Did you have some other bold predictions for us for the season, Clinton?
No, I don't think so, Blake. I mean, Individually, I'd like to really have a better season than last year. I made a lot of mistakes, so I think I'd like to be a bit more strategic in my thinking. And yeah, I went quite bold, probably in game week 3 to 5. I think it was last year. This year, my strategy is quite different. I'm going to be a little bit bold early with the use of the wild card to be a backup after the first few game weeks. And then after that, I'm going to really settle into hopefully make better decisions and yeah, but be a bit more boring with my picks. I think last year I went too bold at the wrong times and it really cost me. So although sometimes it is boring to follow the crowd at times, that's how you stay with the pack and then you can make slight tweaks to your team and then that's how you make improvements rather than being too bold. So it's everyone should play their own game, but that's something I'm trying to do better this year.
Yeah, let's lead into how we're going to set up our teams for this season, Clinton. What are you thinking structure-wise? 5-4, 5-4-1 or a 4-4-2? How are you structuring your team going into game week 1?
As I've said, I've changed my team without joke at least 100 times in the last 3 days. So there's every chance that changes again before Saturday morning. However, at the moment, I've got a 3-4-3, which is a bit against the grain. And you'll see once I read my players out, you'll see why. But there's value down back for sure. However, yeah, I've gone with a different strategy early, which is, as I said, a bit different.
Yeah, for me, Clinton, I've gone with the 5-4-1. I think there's some quality defensive players who I just like to watch, to be honest. I like the way they try and create assists and create opportunities for their team. So I just enjoy watching these players, and so it was tough to pick between them all because they're all strong assets. They score well, and yeah, that's why I've gone 5 down the back. But it does mean that structurally, I've got 2 very cheap options in the forward line sitting on my bench. So it's, if there's an injury or players not picked for game week 1, it leaves me vulnerable.
Yep, there's so many different strategies. As we say, play it your way. Someone may be judgmental of what we've just said, but it may pay off for one of us. So clearly, we're very different. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going through to see what we have. Just slightly off topic, Blake, but whilst we've been chatting now for just over 20 minutes, I think we'd love to hear people's feedback. Obviously, we've just dribbled on for 20 minutes talking about strategies, etc. I think it's important if you are watching or listening to this, please send Blake some feedback, and we can adjust that with our next show because I think perhaps it might be better for us to talk specifically about players and then obviously what we're going to do. But I think with us just talking a bit of rubbish for a while, I think it would be if we can hear what the people want, we can deliver that, Blake. But I think, yeah, talking individual players and what our thoughts is probably a good strategy for next show.
No, that's a good idea. I'm sure I'll cop a lot of feedback, as you like to call it, for my selected team. Let's get into reading through some of our lines of players we've selected, Clinton. I'll kick us off with my goalkeeping strategy. So I think Ward is going to be selected as Leicester's number 1 keeper. And so I've gone 2 4.0 options as my goalkeepers, which has left me with some value around the field. But I've currently got 0.5 left over, so I can upgrade one of them to a 4.5 over the next couple of days. But yeah, I like having that value option there. Depends on what happens with Leicester.
That's a very, very bold start.
If you think that's bold, wait till you see the rest.
That's a very bold start. I don't mind it. Yeah, do it your way. Just be careful though that Ward could be. Obviously, I think that the
It's
likelihood
only
that
if Schmeichel goes there.
the likelihood is that he will start game week 1, but if he doesn't play well, there's another option there they could go to straight away, or they could buy in. Yeah, there's been some news about it recently. So no, well done. That's a very bold start. I also have Ward, but he's on my bench. I'm starting with the 4.5. Obviously, there's good options for 5.5 and 5, but to save a bit of money, I don't mind Sanchez with Brighton. I think despite a tough fixture first up at Man U, I think Man U are just, it's going to be interesting to see how they go this year. And if Brighton get off to a good start and something like keep a clean sheet in game week 1, they've got some great fixtures after that. So I'm backing them in to start okay, and more so Sanchez especially. So I think he's a good goalie.
I think the biggest comparison to Sanchez is Raya. And I saw a side-by-side comparison of their stats from last season, and Raya pretty much beat him in every area in terms of saves, points per game. What do you think he'll swing that the other way around this season?
I think it's the first 3 to 4 fixtures that I've looked at, and that's the main reason why I've gone Sanchez, because I'm not looking too far beyond the first month. As simple as that. And I just am optimistic that Brighton can start okay, and that Man U aren't obviously going through a bit of a transition. There's a bit going on at Man U. I'm just hopeful that Sanchez can score well the first month, and then I'll sort of reassess if I'm going to wildcard.
Yep, fair enough. Let's get into the defensive line now, Clinton. Like I said, I've got the 5 there, and you've got the 3. Do you want to kick us off with your first selection in defence there?
I'll just go with my 3. And then you can. So this is where I'm very bold, and the way that I scoffed at you.
I see where this is going. Yeah.
I don't think so. This is where I'm bold because I've actually gone without any Liverpool defense, which obviously Trent is such a.
You're crazy.
Well, perhaps, but I've gone Perisic for Tottenham, and I've gone Cash and Luca Dean from Aston Villa as my 3 defensive options. On my bench, I have Nico Williams and Patterson from Everton. Yeah.
I also have Luca Dean. I was tossing up between Cash and Luca Dean, but I just like watching him more than Cash, to be honest. I don't know, I just saw more of him last season, and I just got the eye test for me.
Before you start with your negativity about my back line, let's just. I want to go through the rest of the team as we go through each line, and then we can reassess. We can backtrack to my defense after, please.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
When we talked about the high-scoring players in FPL for the season, I was very close to saying Trent might be the highest-scoring player. He's enormous value at 7, even though he's 7.5 as defender, he can score just about as well as a midfielder can. So that's Trent was my first selected. Trent Alexander-Arnold was my first selected defender. Next was Chilwell for Chelsea. All these players I just love watching. Reece James for Chelsea. I think there's a bit of risk with his role. There's talk of him playing a right back position instead of right wing back, and I think a right centre.
Who did you just say again? Sorry,
Reece James.
Yeah.
There's a bit of talk him playing right centre back, which would lower his scoring potential, but I think he'll play high up the pitch. And he's proven last season that he can score very highly in when he's in that position. I think there's a couple of times he scored above 15 points in singular games. So I'm still going to take the risk and put him into my side, as well as Robertson, the other Liverpool defender. So Trent, Chilwell, Luca Dean, Reece James, and Robertson as my defenders.
I'll just say that Chilwell, there's a doubt about him starting this week. So be careful of that. He's not guaranteed to start. So
Why?
you might want to.
Just in the rotation or injury or...
Yeah, he's had a limited build up. So I think that's news that has come out recently. And I think the podcast I told you to listen to earlier, I think that sort of goes into details about that. But I think I'd follow that information up, Blake, over the next 2 days. And I think you might be changing Chilwell out.
Yeah, we'll probably go up to Cancelo.
Yeah, so just let me explain something. All right, I know I wanted to hold off to the end, but I can't hold it. So my theory is that I don't trust Chelsea early with a lot going on with their team, and I think about my team. I think Aston Villa, as I said, they got Bournemouth away, who I think not only can they strong chance for a clean sheet, but very strong chance to get attacking returns for my two boys there. My big query about both Man City and Liverpool is that I think they're not humming. And just hearing reports about the game that was on the weekend, I think with Liverpool, Alisson didn't play, and just listening to stuff post game, neither team was great in terms of their best quality. And in terms of Liverpool's fixtures, Liverpool play Fulham game week 1. They're quite just bold. They're just an attacking team. I think it's every chance that score could be something like 6-2 or something. Like I think Liverpool will smash it, but I just question if Liverpool can actually. And it's at Craven Cottage. I can see Fulham scoring, and if that is the case, Robertson and Trent would have to score obviously attacking returns, which they could. And then Crystal Palace, I think, are quite a strong team, and then they play away to Man United. So I'm just backing in the first 3 weeks that although Liverpool, I think, will win each game, that they won't keep clean sheets. And I'm taking a bit of a risky play against those two options.
The beauty of my 5 players is that they're still very attacking players, and even if they don't keep a clean sheet, that they might be involved in the goals.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep. Let's get into the midfield. So you had a 4 in your midfield as well on field?
Correct. So I've got Mo Salah as my captain, and I have 2 Arsenal players in the midfield in Saka and Martinelli, and I have Leon Bailey from Aston Villa also. So I'm tripled up on Aston Villa going into this fixture against Bournemouth, who are word is going around that they're actually in bad shape, and Operation Attack Bournemouth is in vogue, and I'm attacking with 3 Aston Villa players, and Arsenal are currently on fire, and I expect them. And I just said about Crystal Palace being a tough game for Liverpool. I just think game week 1, Arsenal will go all guns blazing, and hopefully they can score well.
Yeah, I did see that report about Bournemouth. Who is your bench player in the midfield?
Andreas Pereira, who's at Fulham.
That is the only player in the midfield that we have the same, Clinton.
Yep.
I've got no Mo Salah.
Yep.
I've got Son as captain. He was my first selected player, and he hasn't left my side. My next player that I love to watch is Kevin De Bruyne. As a bit of a differential, I've got no Haaland, I've got no Salah, but I've got a KDB. My other players, there's a bit of news about this player in the last couple of days about him potentially going to Newcastle, which would deter me from selecting him in Madison.
Yeah, I'd take him out.
Yes, he's on thin ice there with that news. And Rashford is my other midfield player who's highly selected. I think he's highly undervalued. Before last season, he'd scored 170 points in the 2 seasons previous, and he was priced at 9.5 in those seasons, and now he's at 6.5. I think he'll return back to playing some good minutes and at some good attacking returns for Man U, even though they are rotating a fair bit at the moment.
Well done, Blake. Nice little trap that you picked there at the end. I do like Son and I do like KDB. There's every chance that KDB will enter my team very quickly after game week 1 because I do like him. And versus Bournemouth in game week 2, I'd be liking to have KDB in my team.
Yep. So that leaves me with a 1-out forward. And before the news came out about Bournemouth, it's currently Kai Havertz who's sitting in my attacking position. I think he's due for a breakout season. They know what he does now. I'm concerned about what Sterling coming into that side will do, but I don't think it'll impact too much on Havertz. I think they've picked out his position now. They love him there, and I think he'll have a breakout season finally after watching him in the Bundesliga 2 seasons ago.
Yep. Who are your bench options of your forwards?
They're currently Greenwood and Taylor, the two
Yeah.
4.5 options.
Yeah. So across the teams, that's what you're scoffing at my back line. However, with my forwards, a lot of majority of managers have Jesus in their team, and then a lot of others are choosing between Haaland and Kane. The differential in my team is that I have all three. So I've got Jesus, I've got Kane, I've got Haaland, all in my team. I think Haaland would be an amazing captaincy option in game week 2. And I think Harry Kane will score well in game week 1. I think, as I said, he's 0.5 cheaper than Son. I think he's back to looking his best physically. And I think in terms of that head-to-head comparison, I'm going on the Kane bandwagon and Jesus is on fire. So that's where I differentiate in my team, that a lot of people are juggling between or trying to choose between Kane and Haaland. I've gone with all three. I need them to all start well because I have gone different in the fact that I'm going against the very popular Trent option down back. So in terms of premiums, people call it a threemium, I think they call it. So I do have that. So I do have Salah, Kane, and Haaland. And I still think, looking at my team, I'm happy with my team. Obviously, the big omissions are I don't have Trent or Robertson. I don't have Son or KDB. But my early thought is going into game week 2, I'm actually going to transfer out Salah to KDB. That's how I've gone a bit different, but I'm starting to come to terms with that I'm satisfied with how it looks.
Yeah, we're playing pretty much opposite strategies. I thought you would have been a bit deterred off the big 3 up front from last season, Clinton. Yeah, you brought in Kane, Ronaldo.
No, so what happened is I went all in on pretty much Ronaldo and Lukaku.
Lukaku, that's it, Lukaku.
So they were the two that I went all in on, and I went against Salah, and that decision cost me 3 million ranks in the matter of just a few game weeks. So it didn't work. However, this year's different, though, isn't it, Blake?
It didn't deter you from this game week 1.
No.
That's all right, Clinton. So Salah, captain, game week 1?
Correct. You? Your Son?
Yeah, Son. At home versus Southampton. I think Tottenham should start off the season well. Yeah.
It's
Um,
a juggling act, Blake. I think there's a strong template. We're both slightly different, and yeah, I think the biggest thing to consider is it's not just about game week 1. It's how you transition into 2 and 3. We've got the wild card there as a backup to use soon if we need to. The biggest thing is it's a marathon, not a sprint, and so many people go all guns blazing the first month and then they lose a bit of interest or they don't care as much. Whereas if you just play the smart game, yeah, we're slightly different. So it's I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I do enjoy that we're playing different strategies, Clinton. At the end of the day, you got to enjoy the team that you're putting on there. And yeah, I don't like just going with the template as it's called, and selecting a few differentials. I don't have Salah, no Haaland, no Kane. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but I could be in tears after game week 1. But at, at, at this stage last year, so I was in tears after game week 1, and I turned it around pretty quickly. So, like you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
I think the best advice that I like to use, and it's difficult because we're in Australia, but it's the eye test. It's actually watching the games, seeing. Sometimes it's not necessarily the FPL points they get. It's just watching the game and seeing if the player is really on or not. And that's what I'm looking forward to because obviously the preseason's been on and there's been so many different warm up games, but game week 1 actually provides us with not only the stats but the viewing just to see how they're actually performing, and then we can make proper decisions to make our team better. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm actually looking forward to the games, and yeah, it's somewhat disappointing that Arsenal are playing so early on Saturday because I'd hopefully by the time I wake up, whenever that may be, that they've had a great start.
Yeah, that deadline for Australia is 3:30 a.m. Saturday morning, and that first game being the 5 o'clock Crystal Palace Arsenal game. So early start for you, Clinton. I'm sure you'll be up and about to watch that one.
One more thing about my team. I'm not sure what you have, but I have 0.5 in the bank. So with my team, that allows me, if it's a random decision, if, for example, as I said, I'm likely to get rid of Salah for KDB going to game week 2. However, it frees me up the option if somehow, if KDB hurts himself, if Salah dominates, and I want to transfer Saka to a different 8.0 mid, if the price changes a little bit over a couple of days, it allows me the opportunity to make a bit of a side swap without worrying about the price jumps, because that is very important in the first few game weeks. The prices do go crazy. I think it's about being smart, being patient, and don't react to price changes. Look after your transfers and don't waste them early in the week.
Yeah, I've also got that 0.5, but I'm more likely to use it prior to the game week starting. Can either upgrade Chilwell, one of my goalkeepers, or Madison is probably my most likely to changes to happen before game week 1.
Yep.
Yep. Very good, Clinton. Glad you could join us again now that we've returned back to FPL. Yeah, it's been a good show returning back. So make sure you subscribe and like the show wherever you're listening or watching, whether it be Apple or Spotify podcasts or on the YouTube channel. And make sure you head to the Patreon to support our show. That way we'll be able to keep providing content for you. And yeah, we'll get you into our league and hopefully be competitive against us to win that $200 for our season.
All feedback towards Blake. Hit him up on Twitter. I'm not sure if you've put your Twitter down the bottom of the screen there, Blake, but all feedback towards Blake, and we will provide you with what you'd like. Was there any Twitter questions, Blake?
No, we've had a fair few new followers on Twitter the last few days, but no direct questions about our show. But
no, in terms of I thought Azza might have sent through, our boy Azza might have sent through a question.
No, I'm sure that'll come through the Discord chat, which he gets as a part of his Patreon subscription, Clinton.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be hit with a fair few questions. Azza and Caleb, David. I don't think David will be asking us too many questions after the way he performed last season.
I
But,
think the question, I'm just looking up, so the question that he actually put on Twitter, I found it,
you
was
found them?
Yeah, this is the question. We have to please our audience, Blake.
Oh, sorry.
Ramsdale and Andreas or Sanchez and Bailey is the question.
I like the second one. What do you
So
think?
do I. So do I, because they're both
In your
my
team?
They're both my team. But I do. Arsenal, I've tripled up on their attack. So, but yeah, Ramsdale. I think you have to consider who you're starting, and for me, I'm starting Sanchez and Bailey, whereas Ramsdale and Andreas is more of a bench option, so that's why I'd lean towards Sanchez and Bailey.
Yep. Sorry about that, Az. I must have missed that question come
Yeah,
through this afternoon.
he would have been filthy.
Yeah, sorry, mate. Glad we answered that for you before we wrapped up. Thanks for joining us on MINYIP, and we look forward to joining you next time. Good luck for Game Week 1, and send us through your questions on Twitter or through the Discord chat once you've joined our Patreon. Thank you, Clinton.
Good luck, Blake.
Thanks, mate.